Is it because there's a lot of span tags?
Yeah, so there's 931 of them. So that was not good enough to really help me select what I was looking for. So I expand those out, and then I hover over them. Let's see. Is it not? Yeah, that really isn't helpful because I can't even hover over it to figure out what it is. Let me try getting like the 50th one and see. Okay, cool. So I just at random picked the 50th one out of the array, and luckily that at least that actually happened to be the right one. Let me see if I try the 49th one, if that's the right one, because maybe there's just 900 items on this page. Okay, no, the 49th one is the location. So can you take a guess at what you've got in your console? What could we change about this document query in order to get more specific to the things we're looking for?
Class with it.
Okay. So the way that you include a class in a jQuery selector is, oh, and I'm sorry, I skipped that step where I showed you var $ equals jQuery, window.jQuery. So I'll do that for your benefit. And then, yeah, so $ span. And so the class name on the one that has a picture or that says pick is item px. So I'm going to do dot item px because dot is the class syntax. So if I wanted to have multiple classes, I could do like dot item, dot thing, dot yo, and that's not really going to return anything because nothing has all of the classes item, thing, and yo. But if I just return the ones that have item.px, then I get a list that's manageable. And I can go through them and see that they're definitely here on the page. So now I have a list of at least the word pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the ones without pick still have an IMPX class.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
All right, great. That's super awesome.
They don't have a P. The pick is the subclass though, like it's just P. And
You do span.p.
yeah,
Rather than just the big ones.
P is.
Well, going with what I've got here, because this actually leads into something else. I'm gonna keep going with this method so that we can solve a problem that's a great problem to solve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign var pix equals span.itempix, and then I'm going to actually I'm going to do something a little weird. Here's the kind of thing. This goes back to the people who did JavaScript and HTML and CSS never got in the same room. So what I'm getting is a list of document items, and a list of document items is not a JavaScript array. It's a browser array, and the two are not entirely compatible types. They're similar. So this little bit of code I did right here, this bracket, that what bracket does, just to show you, bracket creates an empty array. Whoops. So if I do var r equals bracket, and then I look at r, it's an empty array. So this is just kind of a dirty hack to get browser arrays to act like real arrays. Is you can do bracket dot slice dot call, and then hand it a browser array, and it will give you back an actual JavaScript array. So talk about something weird where you've got two programming languages inside of the same language that aren't entirely compatible. Kind of mind-blowing. But so from there, it looks the same whether it's a browser array or a JavaScript array, but it behaves slightly differently. So on a JavaScript array, I can call the for-each method and hand it in a function of things to do. So what's going to be handed to the function is an element. So it's going to go through all the spans, and for each span it's going to do something, and I'm just calling that span EL. I guess I could call it span. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap that browser element in jQuery, which is going to make it act a lot more like a JavaScript object and make sense, because the browser objects have really strange APIs and they're extremely incongruent and incoherent. So jQuery is something that you want to use basically with any browser JavaScript app you ever do, because otherwise it's just like mind blown. So I wrap it in this jQuery selector, and that just takes the object and then it's going to make it act like a regular, more JavaScript-like object. And then I'm going to do .text, and I'm just going to console.log. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do if it has text. So an empty string in JavaScript is considered to be a false value, even though you would kind of expect it to be a true value since it's a string. So I'm gonna call .trim. Trim removes white space. So yeah, I guess the best way to do this is actually this right here. I'm going to say if empty string and then triple equals, and then that span wrapped as jQuery. Let me pull this up a little higher. .text. So what .text does is it's going to return the text that's inside of that element. It's actually going to recurse through every single element in the tree, concatenate all of the text of the elements together, and then return the bulk of the text. So if I actually did, for example, if I selected body and did .text, it would actually return the entire page just as a string of whatever text was inside of each element concatenated together. So basically, it would return what you see, but without any of the style, the coloring, or any of the HTML stuff. And then calling .trim. .trim just says remove white space. So if what we get is something that has only emptiness or empty space, it's just going to condense it down to an empty string. So I think you're kind of familiar with these kind of things from Java or whatever else, right? Okay, good. So at this point, I'm going to console.log. Oh noes, nothing even here. And hit enter. And what I see is that there are at least 15 elements which have the class of item picks but don't actually have a picture.
Can you post that on the, just so we can kind of see the...
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I knew how to make this bigger.
Yeah, I just can't see it.
Hold on. Oh, holy mess. Holy mess. Look at that. That was not possible like 3 months ago. That's new. I'm pretty sure. I could be entirely wrong, but I swear I've tried to do this before and it did not actually work so beautifully. Sweet. Okay. So now I'm going to check the opposite condition. I'm going to say if, and I'm using a regular expression here, this slash thingy slash, and I'm going to do .test instead of equals. So what this is basically doing is saying if pick, the regular expression pick, tests positive for the text of the span, then we'll console.log instead, we have a pick. And there are 82 items on the page that, from what we have right now, we believe have a picture. Now, I want to take a slight detour for a second to show you jQuery.com, where the API documentation is. And there's plenty of websites that have terrible documentation for jQuery, and a few, like maybe 3 or 4, that have good documentation. jQuery.com is not one of the terrible ones. I'm not sure it's one of the good ones, but it's not one of the terrible ones. So if you want to know how to do anything modifying a website you're on, this is kind of the place to check for that. All right. Now, what I want to do from here is I want to be able to figure out how do I get the link. Because I'm going to open this up and assume if I get it open on this other page, yeah, okay, there's a picture, right? So somehow I want to get this picture and I want to put it as a thumbnail on this page. Is that what we're trying to do, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Okay. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect this link and try to figure out where it is in relation to the picture. Let me see if I can actually get this out of the way a little bit. Disappear. Expelliarmus. Luminos. Nope, not working. Collapso. Get out of my way-o.
Can you drag it from the sidebar?
That's a good idea. I think I'm going to go with whatever and just make this smaller a little bit. Okay, so here's this link. And then here is one of the pick things right here. Okay? So I need to figure out a way to get back to where this link is in order to grab it. And oddly enough, well, that's interesting. Does anybody see that there's an image URL right there in the tag right next to the link? So here's the link to the item itself, and it looks like this might be a link to the image, so this may actually turn out to be super simple to do. But it's a little bit complicated because, like, are we going to try to get the siblings of that object? And because this is organized as a tree, right? I mean, have you guys all worked with trees in some programming language? And so it's like, well, do I get my sibling in the tree? Do I like try to count back some number of things, or do I like go to my parent and then try to find again? Manipulating a website can be kind of difficult because sometimes it's hard to get it where you're trying to go. So the solution I'm going to suggest is that we try to get the parent. Oh, now I need to go back there to try to figure out what the parent is. So the parent of both the pick class and the link class is up here, this row class, and it doesn't look like there's any other row classes in the way. So I'm going to go from that avenue, go back to the console, and try to get at the row. I happen to know how to do this, so I'm just going to do it. But if you didn't know how to do it, you would kind of Google for it and then try to find the place in the jQuery docs. Like, I would Google for jQuery how to get parent. And boom. There's 2 top hits. This is the one I'm actually interested in. because that one is a lot more convenient than the parent one for like just more generally. So I'm going to do dot closest, and then I'm going to say dot row. And then I'm going to do row text equals row. Actually, I should do this. Common convention when you're working with jQuery is to prefix your variables with a $sign if it's a jQuery element, so that you can kind of see the distinction between a regular JavaScript object, a jQuery element, and then a browser element when you're just glancing through your code. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Because this span here is enclosed in this jQuery thing, it's kind of been jQueryfied. So I'll do row.text, and then I'll replace this match here with row text. And then just in case, like maybe there could be a piece of furniture that actually has the letters PIC in the name of the furniture or in the link or something like that. So I want to make this a little bit more specific. I'm going to put \b on either side, which means a word border. Did anybody see that in the regex documentation? So when you're working in JavaScript, /b means border. As in, there's either a non-text character, such as a hyphen or a space. When you're working in Vim, it actually has two separate characters. It has the left angle bracket and the right angle bracket, and one means beginning border and the other means end border. But in JavaScript, it's just border. You can't specify between beginning and end, but most of the time it works the same anyway. So now I've made my regex a little bit safer, and I'm going to try to get from the row that bit of information that I want. Let's see, I'm going to do row pick equals, and I need to go back.
You can shoot a count to the console button and that at the same time. The second button on the bottom there, show console. So you can see both at the same time.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that won't work very well on this screen, I think. But yeah, that's a good tip. Thanks. Okay, so it looks like there's an image, something right here. So I'm going to just try to figure out what that means, but it's in the class IH. So I'm going to go back to the console and just do row.find.ih and then get from that the ID attribute and then just console.log it down here. Let's see if that works. Cool. So these are IDs for all the images on the page. Does anybody have a guess as to how we might figure out how to actually use that image URL? Okay. But do you think if we do that, that it will actually load an image?
We put it in an image element and attach it to the parent? I think so.
Okay, well, let's try it. I don't think it's going to work, but I think that your idea is a really good idea, and so I'm going to try it. So what we could do here is do image equals new image, and then do image.src equals row pick, and then we could do row.prepend img. Intuitively, does this make sense? What am I doing with this bit of code? Just kind of taking a guess. Anybody? Anybody? I actually also want to give this, I'm going to do image.add class. I'm going to call this JS thumbnail. Just as a convention, whenever I'm working with class names with JavaScript, I always prefix it with JS because class names are also used for CSS, and I like to draw the distinction. I'm adding that class so that later I can delete that. Otherwise, we'll have a bunch of piled up images as we run this a couple times. Okay, so good news is it prepended the image tag. So if I go to inspect element, and I look at the row, I can see that it created an image tag and it loaded that quasi URL. Does anybody have a guess as to why this didn't actually work? Or you had a question?
Oh no, I was just gonna say we can pre-append the actual. Go get the URL of the image on the page and see what needs to be pre-appended to get it to work.
Okay, yeah. So the prepend method that I'm talking about right here is that it prepends the, instead of putting it at the end, like here's the parent, right here is this paragraph, this p tag, and it put that image that we inserted first instead of putting it last, because you either do prepend or append. Just one second. And then, but it would be good to look at an image that's actually working to discover how Craigslist is loading their images. Because I think if we look at a working image, we probably will be able to turn this quasi URL into an actual URL that's useful. And what were you going to say?
Are you just missing the folder where the image is stored there or something?
That's what I'm guessing. That's my guess. My guess is that where this says images and has a colon, that Craigslist at some point decided they might like to try to do thumbnails. Maybe they found out like, oh crap, that really bogs down our server loading pictures for 100 items for every single person. We're not going to do that. So perhaps they disabled the little JavaScript that went and selected those elements and then pulled the thumbnails out, but they left the identifier in. Does that make sense? Just working here, the mind of a developer. Like, how do I do the least work possible to get my job done and sometimes be lazy and leave little breadcrumbs behind, right? So I'm going to go back to this one we opened up, and I'm going to inspect the image and see what we get. And it looks like you were right, because the format of this image, the name is all gobbledygook, probably like a MD5 sum or SHA-1 sum or something like that. But it's on the URL images.craigslist.org. So knowing that about the images, what could we do to make this image load?
Replace image colon space with that URL.
Bingo! We have a winner. Did anybody else think that? I hope so. Do we need to do jumping jacks? I feel like the energy's just died. Every week's a long week. So I'm going to do one other thing. No, I won't do it. I'll just let this go badly, and then I'll fix it after we discover why it doesn't work as nice as it could. Okay, so do new image, row pick, I'm going to call .replace, and I'm going to give it a regular expression for beginning of line image colon, and I'm going to replace that with what?
Images.craigslist.org. /
Okay. So again, this regular expression, the upper caret character means beginning of line, so I'm only going to find things that match image where the beginning of the line is image, because realistically, I mean, like, we kind of think, well, this is so random, right? We don't really know what this is, so it's feasible that we could come across one of these that has the letters IMAGE in it at some point. So better to be safe. And then image colon. So we're just going to match up to that point, and we're the replace is going to operate on anything that matches that and put in its place this URL. So close, I think, maybe. Something went wrong. Let's see what it was. Okay, something about that selector wasn't right. So, yeah. Because I prepinned it again. I didn't remove the previous one, I just prepinned it. So, to address that issue, we'll find everything that matches JS thumbnail. That's a class name. And we'll just call .remove. So that time, every time we run this little bit, it'll clear out the previous ones. And let's do console.log on that row pick again, just to see what might be the issue there. And I'll go ahead and just comment this out for the moment so we can debug. Okay. That's not what I expected. Oh, images with an S. I think that was the issue. Did anybody else notice that? Why didn't you tell me? All right, but notice that little bit we put up here, JS thumbnail remove. As soon as this ran, it removed all of those objects. And then now we'll put this back in again. Holy moly.
So now we gotta scale them down.
All right, let's make these scale down. So Facebook has a really interesting way of how it centers your picture, and that would take too long to explain and go through. So we're not going to do it that way, but we'll try something else that works most of the time. But if I'm going to put up a blog article at some point. I've already got the code on a GitHub gist of like basically the same way that Facebook does it, so that no matter what size or shape picture you upload, it always like boom centers it on your face. Well, it doesn't always center it on your face, but takes a really good guess without actually doing any introspection on the image. Okay, so does anybody want to Google this for me? How I might use jQuery to change an image size? Only you can Google for me. I'm trusting you. Come on. Somebody give me something.
Looks like you can just do the image, $image.width and put the width in there.
Okay, so I'm going... And so what width do we want to make these? 250? 250 pixels? Let's run it again. Personally, it's a little bit large for my taste, but so I'm going to change it. I want to be able to see more things at a time. I'm going to change it down to like something less than that. Oh, another note, if you ever notice that while you're debugging in the console, it starts to go slowly, you just need to clear it out, because what it's actually doing is it's not garbage collecting the things that you did 500 lines ago. It's continuing to append thousands and thousands of objects. So like all the images that I created and then removed, for a lot of them there's still a reference that was in the console. So it's good when you're doing this type of development to clear out the console every once in a while. Otherwise, it gets really slow, and you're like, why is this so slow? It doesn't make sense. It's because you've got these thousands of objects that are still being held in memory by the console itself. So I'll knock this down to like 50. That's maybe too small. Let's try 75. All right, I like that. So now Craigslist does this cool thing that we made it do. And I want to transform our bookmarklet so that our bookmarklet is no longer just a jQuery file, but our bookmarklet is now a Craigslist awesome file. Let me go back to where this happened. Okay, so I'm going to take all this code and, whoops, I'm going to go into the bookmarklet extra and I'm going to paste that code in here. And we don't need to have the console know this bookmarklet is 7 kinds of awesome because all of our friends will be able to see it. All right, so now that I've changed that, I don't even need to update the bookmarklet in the bookmark bar because this has a couple steps of redirection, right? First, the bookmarklet got loaded into the page. We dragged the bookmarklet into the bookmark bar, but when we click the bookmarklet, it goes back to our original server and loads the script from the server. The reason this is advantageous is because when you're doing development cycles like this, you can just click the bookmarklet bar and get the new URL without having to go back through the step of deleting it, adding it again. However, if you had like a bookmarklet that you were using in place of an extension for some sort of product that you were doing, you can do what we did with the current bookmarklet and load the entire application into that bookmarklet. You can have a bookmarklet that is, I mean, it could be a megabyte of JavaScript and it will load. It's just easy to have it go fetch it back from the server for these kind of development cycles. Okay, so oh, I don't even need to do that. I already copied it over. So if I hit refresh, all my hard work is gone. But if I get lucky, I'm crossing my fingers here, holy moly.
Will you place it on the notes?
Yeah, I'll paste this over. So the reason that I didn't have the material for up to this point, and we'll have to save the Facebook stuff for next time, but I think it'd be valuable to see how to use a Facebook app on a page. But the reason I didn't have the material for this pre-done is because I just wanted to be able to take a simple idea that somebody had in the room and be able to get us to all go through it and have something created that does awesome. And this is something, like the reason I like this, I mean, I hope that this is motivating. Does anyone feel more motivated to do something they didn't consider doing before?
Yeah, after having done a similar thing for Chrome and IE than Firefox, this is a lot more convenient. You don't have to learn 3 or 4 different browsers.
Yeah, and you can directly copy if you want your bookmarklet page to look cool. So this is what I've done for mine. Let me see, can I plug into the audio here? Where'd the audio go? Is there not an audio jack? There's not. Okay. But I just... In Chrome, in order to create a bookmarklet, you go to the menu, select bookmarks, and show bookmarks bar. From there, you click and drag word menu, and you take it into the bar. Now that you've got it there, you can go to les.org and log in. So I'll just cut it off at that point. But you can make something that simple to start sharing your extension with other people, and you can directly copy this layout of the site. I actually copied this from fount.art equals work. This is a really cool thing. This bookmarklet makes it so it will tell you what the font is on any web page, wherever that font occurs. So kind of neat, right?
Yeah.
And there is actually no, like if you look at this guy's code, there's not a copyright forbidding the reuse of this. Although I would certainly recommend that you link back to him or give him accreditation for having created this beautiful thing. But let me unclick that. Stop. I'm stuck in the bookmarklet. But yeah, so I just like completely ripped him off and then just gave credit to him down here, and then created a little video that shows how this works, and so now I can give this to my friends and they can see it and play with it, and it's something like real, something that you can share with people. And I think that coding becomes fun when you get past the point of binary search trees and you get to the point of, hey ma, look, no hands. Anybody agree with that? Yeah, I like them too, right? I like them too, except for when I try to tell my girlfriend about the binary search tree I created, she's like, well, she doesn't exist right now. But if she did, say my last girlfriend, for example, she'd be like, that's cool, that's sweet.
That's what my wife does.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice to be able to have something you can show people that's like usable, and this really wasn't a lot of work. I mean, getting that template set up was a little mind-boggling, but that template, now you've created that template, you can replace bookmarklet -extra with any script that you want, and you can use this template. You could put 10 different of these type of apps on your blog or your website or whatever, and you can just share it with people and have fun. So I will update the blog with the script that we created. In fact, I'll go ahead and do that right now. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Are you going to put the other? Are there any other commands?
I'll go back through this and I'll make sure that
Okay.
that it's
Yeah,
updated with
because I
everything that we
messed
did
up the
today.
whole thing.